Hey guys, my name is Morgan Basant, and I'm known online as Morg City. Welcome to the artist panel at Afro Comic Con Virtual 2020 event, and thank you so much for joining us. Please consider donating to the AFCC/Moonshot Junior program that funds young girls of color to go through a 12-month program where they will learn tech skills, innovation, product development, and entrepreneurship. Please click the donation link, any amount will help. More information will be available on the website.
All right, you guys. Well, I am going to do this process by showing something that a lot of people kind of know me for online, and that is doing anime redraws. And I'm just gonna kind of walk y'all through the process of everything that I do for that, kind of starting from the research portion of everything to the final product. So I'm sure y'all can see from this screenshot that I am working on a redraw of Miroku from Inuyasha. And I was actually commissioned to do this one. It was something that I was already planning on working on. So for all of my Inuyasha redraws as of, late, I have been wanting to kind of put a different spin on it than usual, and I sort of wanted to pull some more West African inspiration for these. So when I was sort of looking up what Inuyasha is about and, the time period that it's in, it takes place during the Warring States period in Japan. And I want to say that starts around 1400s, goes to like 1500s-ish. I honestly can't remember the dates offhand, but when doing a little bit of research on it, I wanted to see what in Africa would be analogous to this, because I'm changing this into a black person, so I kind of wanted it to make some sort of sense. I wanted this to be more like of a alternate universe sort of deal. Like, what if they were black? Like, what would their attire be like? How would things change culturally? So I found the Songhai Empire, and that's actually something that I had studied in college to a certain degree. So I wasn't too unfamiliar with it, but I wanted to do a little bit of research on it. Now, I had found a few images, just kind of looking around. Y'all can kind of see them here. Um, I had been kind of just searching images of Songhai peoples, men in particular, just for this one. And I was actually lucky enough to get noticed by a Songhai woman on Twitter. And she shares a lot of information about her culture on Twitter. I'll actually just pull her up, and you can see her username right here. She shows like different types of turbans, different types of headdresses for women, and some things she has of other cultures, different headdresses and things like that. And I've actually kind of bookmarked a lot just for, my personal research. So what I'm basically going to do is I'm going to mash up some things of Songhai with Miroku so that it's sort of recognizably him to a certain degree, but, he's black and he's of a different culture because we don't want him to look exactly the same. So my tools today for my sketching and drawing and whatever, I am using Clip Studio Paint Pro, which I really enjoy because I like all the different types of brushes that just come with it. You get like all kind of different little textures and everything, and so it's fun to be able to use and kind of get something a little maybe grittier if you want, or maybe like oil paint based. And on top of that, you can also use your PSD files in Clip Studio. So if something goes wrong with Photoshop, which I also use, I can always just come in here and do whatever. So, it's really handy to have. I am also using an old model of Wacom tablet, I have a, let's see, this is a Wacom Intuos 3 graphics tablet. I have actually had this since high school, and wasn't really, didn't really want to retire it since it still works so well. So what I kind of start with is, by making a new layer, all separate from all of this stuff here, my screen cap and everything. And whenever I start, I always try to keep my board big enough so that I can, always kind of like toggle back and see the research that I have, and I can make sure the screen cap that I'm going to redraw is close by. Okay, so moving right along, oops, I don't want that on there. So I start, of course, with a sketch. I like to kind of use the pencils for this. I just kind of like the textures of it, so I always have gone with Brio pencil. It's just kind of my favorite one to use. Um, I kind of keep my, brush density down to a certain degree so that everything isn't, too dark, because this is a sketch, and, I don't want everything to be like totally undiscernible. So, I kind of like started a little bit something here, but I'll just, redo it for the sake of the video. I will do a new layer. I'll rename this Sketch Revised. That's not how you spell revised. Okay, there we go. So, something that I always kind of do when I start is I break things down to the most basic shapes that I see. It just kind of makes things easier to kind of get all the forms that you want, and it kind of helps you to, build on it later and kind of, like put the details on and get the proportions correct and everything. So I just kind of start by, sketching, kind of mapping things out, kind of start with a little bit of kind of do like a sort of triangular-ish trapezoidal figure for his torso and arm area here. His head is slightly turned inward, so I'll just kind of reflect that a little bit in the skeletal thing here. And then when I kind of feel like I'm to a point where I like how it looks, I'll just go ahead and start building on it a little bit more. I'll just start kind of trying to develop the figure a little bit more, not necessarily going into details quite yet, but, just showing, where the shoulders are. His shoulder comes like right about here. Then his arm goes down, and he has another part here. Sometimes I'll just put the opacity of the layer down just to kind of help me see the darkest parts of it. Then I'll start developing his head a little bit, kind of basically where I want it to be. And of course it's not going to be exact because, based on the research that I did, he's going to be wearing a turban, so he's not necessarily going to be looking exactly the same because I want him to have some level of accuracy. But, it's just kind of to see basically how things are going to be. He has a collar here, but you know what? He's not going to have that collar. Okay, so I'll define where his shoulder kind of hits. His other shoulder kind of hits here. And everything here is like his arm. So his arm comes about this far out. So I'm kind of just eyeballing it to see exactly where I need to put things. So where his hand is going to be, and his hand is going to be balled up. Kind of just do a circle here, and then I just kind of connect it over. And that's about his arm. It's a little messy, but, of course I can go back and fix that later. And I kind of want to keep a little bit of the folds in the robe because the clothes he's going to be wearing are going to be very similar. So, okay, now I want to kind of get his other hand. He has his other hand on top here. So I'll just kind of put a little mark here. And it kind of comes out from, his arm kind of comes out from where his other fist is. And so I'll kind of just mark it here. And about a little in front of his shoulder is where his other sleeve kind of falls. And, you know, this is all still pretty rough. So I always kind of have to go back and, you know, change a little bit of things around anyway. Maybe like move the head or change some proportions of stuff or whatever. But in general, this is kind of, you know, how he looks. I think I'm going to erase just a little bit of it. I'm going to change the density a little bit just so it doesn't whack off too much. His neck is actually, it's a little bit long, so let's see. I don't think I want his neck to be quite that long, so I will kind of go back and add a little bit there. Okay. So now that I kind of have like a basic thing kind of going on of what I want, I'm going to start going ahead and starting to try to flesh him out a little bit more. Going to start trying to put his face down, where I'm going to put his nose, where I'm going to put his mouth, and, you know, kind of map that stuff out. So that's kind of what I'm going to start on next. Is I'll actually make his head a little bit bigger because even though we won't see it, you know, or at least we won't see all of it. Still kind of want to show that, and just come in here with the eraser to kind of get rid of some of these extra lines. Okay, I'll kind of just go back and kind of fix his jaw a little bit. Don't want his jaw to be too pointed. Personally, it's, you know, just a thing of mine. I try to keep my male characters with, you know, different jawlines. So, I'm going to kind of go back and reference some of the, references that I have. And, you know, I kind of try to keep these in mind when I'm drawing the face because I want to keep some of these sort of physical traits in mind because, you know, even though I'm redrawing Moroku, I still, you know, want him to look, you know, like he has some, I guess, more features that are common to that area. So kind of looking at this guy down here primarily, and I kind of like the way his nose is shaped. So I think I might kind of go with something like that. I think I'm going to zoom in a little bit just so I can kind of see a little better where I'm going to mark it. I usually, when I kind of do this, I, you know, map it out again, sort of put some basic shapes where I want his facial features to be. I'm going to change this brush size a little bit, and you know what? I'm going to try to erase a little bit of the face. Or, I'm going to try to anyway. Or maybe I can turn up the brush density. Yeah, that's better. Yeah, that's much better. Okay, so I'm going to change this up a little bit. And he's got a smirk on his face, so I kind of want to keep that. Okay, this is kind of where his facial features are going to be. I'm going to change his nose around a little bit to match this guy's a little bit more. Take the brush density down just a tad. And kind of shape out the nose, kind of just to make it a little bit more discernible. And going to add his lips in here. This is kind of one of the reasons why I like using this pencil, just because, you know, makes it a little bit easier to kind of just like roughly sketch out some things that I like, as opposed to using a brush, which, you know, wouldn't necessarily give the same effect. So as of right now, I'm trying to make sure his head is big enough to sort of fit the features that I'm trying to put on, while not too big. I think I'll go ahead and erase some of these lines here and some of these here. I'll go ahead and start adding his eyes. I'll try to keep his eyes sort of big, because I feel like that's kind of a defining trait of his. He doesn't necessarily have small eyes. So maybe I'll squish it over a bit. Okay, I think I kind of have it to where I want it a bit. It's going to need a little bit of fine-tuning on the face, but, you know, it's getting somewhere. I give him those, you know, same eyebrows. So, there we go. Now, I'll kind of start going in and kind of erasing a little bit more so I can kind of see what I want to do here. Because once I kind of go back, I don't want to get confused by all of these different lines. And usually I can kind of see what I'm, you know, going for, since I kind of remember. But just in case, I don't want it to become too sloppy. I think I'll make his head a little bit bigger. I'll shade this bridge down a little bit. Oops, that's a bit too much. I think I might get rid of it all together. You know what, I might lasso this. This is something that I also kind of like to do, is kind of like to lasso things just in case. So no, that's a bit too high. Just in case I feel like I might have put it in the wrong spot, but I still like the way that it, you know, has been drawn, and might want to just kind of move it in a different position. I'll go ahead and just lasso, and I can just move it out of the way so I can sort of kind of redo how I need to do. There's his face. Okay. Now I'll kind of just sort of try to start doing a little bit more of his hands and everything. So just to start kind of getting some of this. So I'm going to work with my little ball I have here. And I might erase a little bit of this. It's kind of getting a little messy. But again, I'm just kind of eyeballing it. I'm always trying to keep my eye on the original thing that I'm trying to draw, while trying to consistently, you know, keep my eyes on what I'm drawing. It kind of helps me because, you know, you can never really remember exactly what exactly you're trying to draw. Or at least I can't. So I kind of have to make sure I kind of keep my eyes on it so I can get it as close as possible, to the best of my ability. Okay, and let's see, his hand kind of starts here, and his wrist is about here, and his palm is like about here. Okay, So I think I've kind of got it how I want it. Yeah, I think this looks pretty, well, looks pretty close. I'll go ahead and start adding his other hand, which is on top of this hand. Start adding all his fingers in this sort of circular blob I've already kind of put here. I'll kind of start trying to add a little bit more of the details that I'm missing here. Okay, so let's see. He's got this part of his robe that's kind of folding over here. I'm not going to do all of this because, of course, all of it isn't exactly showing. Kind of put this here, and you know what, I'll keep this on here, on his arm, which I really wasn't going to at first, but, you know, I think it keeps him. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and start to sort of add his robe on and his turban. So I'm going to kind of go like back and reference some of, you know, the stuff I kind of have over here. I'm looking at sort of how the way these different turbans are wrapped. I think I kind of still am partial to this one at the bottom. Just because his ears are out, and then, you know, I can still add his earrings. So I think I'm going to go ahead and go with this for his turban. You know, just kind of do very similar robe to what he already has on, since, you know, that's basically what they've got going on. Probably won't see much of the neck, just because the way the turban is wrapped, they kind of have that, you know, around their neck. So I'll just go ahead and kind of start adding turban wrap on his head. Let's see. Let me kind of go back and see. Just can't really see the way it looks in the back, but can, you know, can see, kind of guess. Couldn't see it being like too different around the back. Then I can sort of add the part around his neck here. Now start kind of erasing some parts of the neck. Not all of it, because a little bit of it can still be exposed. But I kind of got the general idea here. Kind of got his ear coming out here. Now I'll kind of wrap it around a little bit more, and let's see, let me go back and see kind of what these look like. They're kind of wrapped around the head, and let's see, we got kind of like maybe like 2 wraps around, and then you can kind of see the top up here. And then I'll kind of go ahead and start erasing a little bit of his head here, or the rounded parts of his head that I had up. Maybe add like a little bit of hair by the ear, just a little bit, just to show that it's not completely covered up with the turban. Okay, and let's see kind of how else this is done. Just kind of want to make sure I'm draping it properly, because kind of want it to look right. So kind of got these folds I'm drawing on here. Okay, and I think that's about right. I'll kind of keep this wrap around his hand like I planned on doing. 'Cause even though that's not a part of their outfits, you know, I still want it to be Miroku-esque. Okay, you can see kind of how the folds come around here. Let's see. He's kind of got this fold here, this fold here, and let's see if I can scooch over. Got this here, kind of where his elbow comes. I'll try to erase a little bit of this. Okay. And I'll sort of try to clean up a little bit of it here. And I'm just considering doing that sash, but I think I'll leave it off just because I don't really see that much in the other men's outfits, so I'll just leave it be. Because he's already going to have the beads and everything on his arm, so he'll be still pretty discernible. At least I think so. So I'm kind of going to mimic some of the beads on his arm. Oh, and he has a ring here, so let me draw that on. By sort of pulling some of these little beads I found. And I just kind of wanted to use them as a color reference. Because his are more of a bluish color. And that's not exactly what I want to go for, since I want to have something that's going to, you know, sort of match up with what I'm going for. So I'll have them kind of wrap around in a similar way. And just kind of erase some little parts here. And whatever I kind of erased, I turn into a bead. And I'll just make them thicker because these beads here, they just look pretty thick. Let me see if there's maybe anything else on it. Might just go ahead and add this here, this little knot I see here. Because see, I see he has like a little thing hanging on there, so I'll just kind of add this little braided knot to it. You know, so while this is, of course, not going to be 100% accurate, because it's based off of an anime character, you know, I still kind of want to pull some elements just to add a level of realism. And so since he has this staff here, and I wanted to replace it, I found this on that Song Eye Woman's Twitter page. It was just a staff, so I just figured I would just do kind of a plain staff to replace the one that he has, since of course it wouldn't look exactly like this. So I'll just maybe have like a little curved at the end and everything. It won't be perfectly done. Just kind of like how, oops, dragging the wrong thing. Just kind of like how his is in the reference. So I'll just kind of, you know, add some of my little finishing sketch touches. What I might just get rid of this just for now. It's just a little shadow that I put under their faces, but I'll just kind of omit it just for now, so I can make sure I know what I'm drawing here, because after this I kind of move on to the cleanup stage. Cleanup and line art. Oop, that's not right. So I think so far for my sketch, this is kind of what I wanted to go for. Let's see. I'll add the bottom part of his eye to the sketch. You know what? I might bring this up a little more because he's got a pretty big forehead, and I mean, they kind of showed it in the screen cap that he has a pretty big forehead, so maybe I should accentuate that a little bit. And maybe I should make his head a little bigger. You know what? I think I might actually round up his chin just a little bit. Go back and reference my turban to see if that's exactly how I want to do it. Let's see, how does his wrap around? Okay, it is like actually wrapped around like a scarf, so it's not going to come down from both sides like I have it. So I'll change this. And I do this a lot, y'all. I notice mistakes that I do, and I have to change stuff like a lot. Sometimes I won't even be to, way to the color stage. I'm like, oh, jeez, I gotta fix it. So, okay. I'll shade this a little bit just so I can, kind of see that this is where the opening of the sleeve is. So I don't really get it confused with something else. And since it kind of cuts off like way before what I put it, I am going to kind of just draw like a little cutoff line down here. Because I kind of just want to make sure I don't go too far. And I will, you know what, since this is so small on him already, I'll just make it smaller here too. And there is my sketch, basic sketch for this. And so from here, kind of start cleaning stuff up. I start doing my line art. I kind of start, getting things to a more finished point. Okay, so now since I'm finished with my sketch, I'm going to go ahead and start with my line art. And so kind of started a new layer here. I try to make sure I always label them, because if I don't, I'm going to get very confused and I'm going to accidentally draw on the wrong thing, which is a tragedy. So I kind of have a rough pencil that I'm working with. It's, pencil is always kind of my favorite to work with, just because I like the texture that it gives the line art. I always kind of like to let it have a little bit of character. So I always kind of try to stick with something that has some texture. Now I've turned my texture density a little bit lower on this particular pencil, just because I don't want it to look just as rough as the sketch. And I do want it to have a little bit of, actually, I think I'll turn it up just a tad. But I do want it to have a bit more of a line art quality. So I'm, going to kind of just start outlining things here, defining his facial features, just kind of drawing that in. And honestly, my line art, it starts off very, very rough, and I generally have to make changes, just because it's not exactly my favorite part of the drawing process. My drawings are always a little bit looser, and so I kind of have to, I just go back and clean things up a little bit more. So here I am kind of just kind of outlining what I have, going over it a little bit with a bit of a cleaner brush, and then kind of just going back and correcting, the things that I want to look a certain way. So kind of have my eyelids here. I'm just going to fill that in. More like this. I got his eyelid here. More like this. I go back, and usually I'll go back and fill this in a little bit more so it can, be a little bit darker. But this is just to try to get how it basically looks. He's got those same eyebrows. They start off thin at the eye and they get thicker at the side of his head, and then kind of thin out again. I just kind of want to make sure I keep that quality. So it's very Inuyasha. I'll kind of go ahead and redefine his nose. I think I want to, let's see. Yeah, I think I'll scooch it down here a little bit more. Yeah, that's good. And I'll move his smirk over a little bit as well. I think I need to change this brush size. Oh, it's a bit too small, so I have a bad habit of not using these little arrows, and it's not exactly as effective trying to use that little slider, because I always go too far. I'll go ahead and just try to define his lip here. Got a kind of smirk on his face. I'll kind of pull this hairline in a little bit. Kind of just go around and start doing his turban since it connects. And it sort of wraps around like this, so I want to make sure I show kind of all of how it wraps in the line art. It all seems to be fabric sort of wrapped around each other and then wrapped around the head. And so I don't really want to lose that quality as I'm drawing it. part kind of comes down and drapes around his neck. I think that's good. I think I want it a bit more like this. Okay. Yeah, that's kind of how I want it. I want to kind of go ahead and make sure I separate that because it all looks like it's just one piece that kind of goes all the way around. Now, since I've kind of gotten that done, I want to try to clean it up just a little bit around here. You know, try to get some of the things cleaned up. Add his little earrings here. Clean up this ear since it's awfully sketchy. Ah, and that's right, I have to get the top of his turban. I don't want to leave that out, so make sure I fill that in. Kind of finish up all these lines here. I think so far so good. Could be tweaked a tad, but I'll save that for when I'm going forward. Okay, now I want to go ahead and do his robes. And so, kind of having a little bit of trouble remembering where I put these lines at, so let's see. Oh yeah, that's right. It all kind of, whoopsie, I'll just get way over here. Come back over this way. Okay, there we go. So I can kind of see everything. I'll actually make this a little bit bigger. I think I need a bigger one. So let's see. How exactly does this look? Okay, I have it like this. I have this here. Okay. Yeah, I see now. I think this staff is probably going to run into this a little bit, so let's see. Okay, so now we're kind of at the final-ish portion of everything. I kind of just went ahead and did all of my sort of line art stuff. I changed around a couple of things that I thought needed to be changed. And in fact, I think I want to actually change a little bit of how this turban wraps around his head, actually. I want to make sure this all makes sense. Yeah, so I think that looks a little bit better. But anyway, I kind of just went ahead just so I can sort of save a little bit of time since I have a limit. And just sort of finish up most of my line art here. You know, I kind of cleaned it up a tad. As you can see now, my sketch layer it is red, and I usually just change it to red because I kind of want to make sure it stands out against what I'm doing and it doesn't get too mixed up. It just kind of is a sort of visual thing to help me and, kind of make sure I don't draw something and it looks a certain way, but, once you take the sketch layer off, it looks totally different. So I can kind of hide it. I can kind of see more what my liner looks like. And so now I can kind of go ahead and move on to color. So I'll go ahead and make a new layer here. And let me see. Kind of want to pull a color. Usually what I do is if I see a certain skin color that I think will work, I usually will just take the dropper and sort of pull a color. I think that this works pretty well. And this will be the skin here. And so I'll go ahead and select, let's see. Let's see, brush density. Okay. I think that this works. I'll just kind of go ahead and like fill in where his skin is. I think I want a smooth brush instead. Let's see. I'll change the density. Here we go. And kind of just, I start off by just filling this all the way in. And I'll go ahead and fill in like all of his skin and, wherever his skin is showing, I just kind of paint it completely, just one solid color. Kind of like the way this one looks. So I'll just keep this one. Generally try to keep it in the lines, but if I don't, that's fine. I can always just go and erase it. You know what? Let me see if maybe I want to. Yeah, I think I'll do oil paintbrush instead. It flows a little bit better. So go ahead and paint in his arms, and all that's really showing is his hands, one of his arms, and his face. So I'll go ahead and paint all that in. And this little piece of his arm here. Okay. I'll kind of just go ahead and erase all of this here. You know what, I want to turn up the hardness. I want this to be 100. So I'll turn up my hardness. So I can just kind of get a clean erasure. I'll go fill in the spaces that this ink brush did not really catch. I'll just sort of simultaneously cleaning up some of the stuff. I know a lot of people, when they kind of do different applications, they use like the paint bucket, but you know what, my line work is never really quite connected enough, and sometimes I just kind of like the way it is, and So I never really use the paint bucket. I just kind of paint everything in. And so from here, I'll just kind of clean everything up. And after the basis of this is done, whoopsie, I will kind of do some of the finishing touches to what the skin should be like and move on to the rest of them. Erase that in with a different layer. Gotta change the brush size a bit. There we go. Now I will use the same color here for his skin and make it a touch darker. I'll make the brush a little smaller too so I can do his lip. Hey, also, just to kind of save some time, I'm going to kind of just do like a little basic run through of the rest of the painting process. Just like y'all have seen with the skin that I did, I kind of just fill everything in. Usually just use a paintbrush and just kind of color everything. Generally, when I do these redraws, I'll do like a color pull. If I feel like I have to adjust the colors a tad, I may. But usually I'll try to stick to the same type of colors that are in the original screenshot, and I'll just kind of paint through that. I'll just do like a sort of flat color, just like I do with the skin or hair or anything else. And I don't really have hair to do in this particular one since he's wearing a turban. But generally, if I'm doing somebody who has hair, I'll paint the hair the same way. And so I didn't really put a sash on him, so it's just going to be a flat color for his robes. And his little armband and turban can be the purple of his sash. And I will also have to color his staff and any jewelry or anything that he may be wearing. And I kind of just do a flat color of that. Also, when I do my flat color, it shows any kind of errors that I might have made in the coloring process of layers above, and I kind of use this as an opportunity to maybe erase things if I need to. Usually it's kind of hard for me to kind of see if I might have colored a little out of the line art a tad, just because, a lighter color on white isn't exactly going to show up so strong. So I kind of use that as a way to erase anything or fix anything or clean anything up. So just going to keep coloring everything on him here. And then just kind of make sure nothing is running into things, just clean things up kind of as I go along. Especially when using darker colors like this, it can be a little harder to tell when something is off here. You know what? This actually needs to be colored over again. And I was originally using the oil, but I kind of feel like for this, I'm just doing a flat color. I don't necessarily need to use the oil brush. So, I just use the darker pencil. I adjust the hardness, adjust the brush density, just so I can make sure it's getting enough coverage for everything. And I just kind of paint all of his clothing. All of his clothing, his jewelry, and, whatever he has. Okay, and so finally, after I do like everything else, I add my shading, which I usually try to do the same with everything else. I kind of just try to pull it from what I've got going on already. Usually I will use the darker skin colors to do my skin shading. Now he's got kind of all this going on with the turban, so, well, his whole neck might not be, but I'll go ahead and do it like that. And I'll kind of just, shade the face where I see fit. Usually that's by the eyes, under the nose. There's usually a point here where it's also shaded. Of course, I always try to use the lighting in the original as sort of a guide for that as well. And let's see. I'll change the density here. And I just kind of want it to look kind of like it matches back with whatever's going on this end, lighting wise. So kind of just sort of basically it. So I don't necessarily have time to get to the rest of it today. I usually might add like some shine to the jewelry, or add the background, of course, and I just don't necessarily have time to do it. But this is a general idea of how I get my character work done. Now I can still kind of go back and tweak it and make adjustments, but this is generally how I get from my research and my sketches to my final product.
All right, thank y'all so much for joining us once again at the artist panel at Afro Comic Con virtual 2020 event. Once again, please consider donating to the AFCC/Moonshot Junior program that funds young girls of color to go through a 12-month program where they will learn tech skills, innovation, product development, and entrepreneurship. Please click the link. Any amount will help, and more information will be available on the website. Thank you.